Timing is everything. Timing is everything. No doubt we've all said those words before, and there's really some truth to it. Sometimes when we are doing something or going someplace and everything just seems to work out perfectly, we'd say timing was perfect. And probably on the other side, we've always all experienced too, where timing wasn't so good and things just didn't seem to work out. You know, for example, if it's time for you to buy a house, timing is everything, isn't it? You know, if you hit the right time when the interest rates are low and there's many houses for sale, good time to buy a house. On the other hand, timing may not be so good because, you know, if you hit it when interest rates are high and there are very few homes for sale, not very good timing. Now you're going to see the next picture is, from one of my trips. Trips sometimes need to be timed right too, especially if you drive on a trip, because driving on a trip is very, very important. There I am behind the wheel. And, timing is very important. I remember the first time I drove down south and we hit Washington, D.C. on a Friday at 3:30 on the Beltway. Not good timing. Similarly, one time I drove through Chicago and I made it to the Kennedy Expressway at 10:30 in the morning. Perfect timing. Pretty easy travel. Timing really is everything. Well, I want you to take that idea of timing to the scripture today and to think about these 10 virgins that we hear about. Timing is really part of what the gospel's about. We hear about these 10 virgins and they're bridesmaids, if you will, but not really in the sense of the term that we use bridesmaids today. They're really more representative of you and me, all of the baptized. So instead of really being bridesmaids, they're really the bride of Christ. They represent all of us, the baptized. Jesus, of course, is the bridegroom. And among these 10, we hear 5 were very wise. They represent those who persevere in their faith in difficult moments and good moments. They're ready at a moment's notice. And the 5 foolish, well, they certainly had faith, but they were kind of slack. They weren't really prepared. These 10 virgins really represent all of us in the Christian life. And really the call is to be one of those 5 wise virgins that persevere, not knowing when the Lord is going to call us. And the basic message really is that the wise disciple of the Lord is the one who practices temperance, and that wise disciple is the one who practices good works. But that wise disciple is also the one who is always ready, as the readings this weekend remind us, for that moment in time that will be called to see the bridegroom, to see Christ face to face. There are many images in the gospel that we could consider today. The one we just considered briefly, as well as the meaning of virginity as it's used in this particular gospel, the image of the lamp, the image of the oil, all of these images have a very rich meaning, but we're going to pause right there. And I don't want you to get your hopes up that the homily's over. Don't get your hopes up, And I want us to take that idea of timing and persevering as a faithful disciple in Christ to our consideration of stewardship. Every year at St. Greg's, 3 times a year, actually, we reflect on stewardship. In the winter, we always reflect on the stewardship of time, and we reflect on our call to pray and to allow our time to be used wisely in prayer for the Lord to transform our mind and our heart, to be that faithful disciple. And then in the late spring, we always reflect on the stewardship of talent, how we use our abilities to serve the parish in a greater way. We have a ministry fair many years calling you to really reflect on the beautiful ministries of the parish, to be involved. And in the fall, we always reflect on the stewardship of treasure, to use those financial resources, physical resources we have to further the gospel here at St. Greg's. Well, some might say my timing on a stewardship talk is very bad, given what we read 2 weeks ago at all of the masses regarding the bankruptcy. However, others might say the timing is correct, that despite all of the issues that face the church and the diocese, our parish must move on. We have a very vibrant parish that's very rich in ministry and service, and we can't lose that focus. We have an awesome parish that also requires us to pay our bills of salaries and utilities and maintenance and so on. In a couple weeks, you'll receive the letter that you always receive from me at the end of November, because part of our regular budget is not including the buildings and grounds capital work. Every year we send you the letter, and this year the largest ticket item we have facing us is the roof on the ministry center. A few years ago, the part over the gym was replaced, but the rest of the roof now needs to be replaced. There's 7 sections to the roof. I now know more about roofing than I've ever wanted to know. And there's 7 sections to that roof, and 2 of them are an immediate need because they're spongy. They're not going to survive the winter, that's for sure. We're looking at almost $250,000 to replace that roof. And so we have work ahead of us. We need to remain focused and vigilant. So I realize my timing on stewardship of the treasure might be objectionable to some at this point in time, but I do invite us to always, continually, daily, really reflect on our stewardship of time, talent, and treasure to the Lord. Why is it a good time? Well, first of all, I hope you read the article I wrote in the bulletin, because there's many other details there that are not in my homily. And you'll see that, unfortunately, for the second year in the row, we've ended the fiscal year, which ended August 31st. We ended the fiscal year with a deficit, 2 years in a row of a deficit, and the current budget is a deficit budget. And I assure you, really, the Finance Council, myself, we are really taking that very seriously to close that gap. And we are taking it very seriously. Parish, however, has changed. I have been here now almost the end of 10 years, beginning 11th soon. And back in 2019, 2020, that fiscal year, we had 6,212 registered families that were receiving envelopes to support the parish. This fiscal year that just ended, August 31st, we have 4,939 families who receive envelopes to support the parish. It's not a problem that any other parish isn't also facing, a decline in the number of regular participants. I dare say every parish in the diocese is, and I dare say every religious congregation of any religious denomination is experiencing the same as I talk to my colleagues across the board. Why do we see these changes? Well, on one part, it's the great work of Brian Rue in evangelization. He's contacting all of the families we haven't heard from in some time. And we've learned many things. We've learned that some people have passed away that we didn't know because they didn't have a funeral here. Some people have moved away and they never really told us. And some individuals, since COVID, they've really decided not to really return to the active practice of faith. There's many reasons we've been hearing. At the same time that we've seen that decline in the number of registered families receiving envelopes, we look at the Sunday collection in 2019-2020. The Sunday collection was $1,976,696.48. You can never forget the 48 cents, you know. And this past fiscal year, even though there are fewer of us participating, the Sunday collection, you will see when you read the financial statements printed soon, was $2,148,891.03. Again, we can't forget the 3 cents, huh? So in a time where we see fewer registered families who are receiving envelopes, you've become more generous. And I do very sincerely from the depth of my heart thank you for all of what you do to support the ministry and the work here at St. Gregory the Great. So the question may be, well, why are we in this situation? Why do we have this deficit? What is going on? Well, first of all, costs of everything have gone up. I don't have to explain that. Your own household budget will do that for you. And the needs that people have are increasing. The demands upon our ministers and our various ministries have increased, particularly since COVID. And many of those who have been the most generous over the years, unfortunately, have passed away, and some have moved. I will say, when I arrived, the top 10, if you will, donors of the parish back then, I've celebrated their funerals. And so that has changed our parish. When I arrived, there was one individual who would give every year for the first few years I was here until they were gone. They would give $50,000 to $60,000 a year, one individual. Unbelievable that they were so blessed and they chose to share their blessings with all of us. I think you can imagine the number of individuals it takes to replace one such generous parishioner. And I don't want you to think that I know what all of you give. I really don't ever look at those things. I don't want to really know. However, I do know the letters that I sign. And when I sign letters, I read them. And so I've become aware of what some individuals have really done for us. And again, I thank all of you. You're going to see on the screens there a little chart, something to consider. One column is the percentage of the total collection and the number of parishioners responsible for that. So there is one family that contributes 1.36% of our collection. So if you think a little over $2 million, 1.36% of that came from one individual. There are 4 individuals who collectively gave 3.25% and 6 who gave 3.2% and 47 collectively that gave 14.37% of our collection last year. So what does that really mean? It means that 22.15% of our parish income came from 58 individuals or families. Out of the near 5,000, 58 individuals or families are responsible for almost a quarter of the financial resources we need to further our ministry and work at St. Greg's. That's an important statistic to really ponder. You can also say that it's 1.2% of those registered at St. Gregory's have carried 22.15% of the financial burden. I won't go through all of the categories, but I'll share one last one with you, and that is that 2,620, a little over 50%, really 53% of the registered parishioners who receive envelopes do not give anything. In the last fiscal year, they didn't even contribute $1 in the stewardship of treasure. It's also something that we have to consider. So again, the question, how did we get here? Well, again, I've told you the number of families have changed, and certainly COVID was a factor, and death has been a factor, and certainly the cost of doing business has gone up, and the needs of families have gone up, and many generous donors have passed or moved. But we also see that the challenges of the church and the challenges of the diocese have contributed. Some refuse to give because of them. And we need to consider all of those things and question, well, what is it we need to do now? Well, we need to really take stewardship seriously, that stewardship of our time to daily truly pray and to allow the Lord to transform my mind and our heart to that greater sense of generosity and service. Secondly, our stewardship of our talents, to really reflect what is it that I can do to contribute of what I know how to do to serve the needs of the parish community. And in the fall, we always reflect on that stewardship of treasure. And so I invite you really and ask you humbly to really prayerfully consider what it is you can do financially to assist the parish and our community with our ongoing ministry and work. Stewardship scripturally calls us to give the first 10% of what we earn back to the Lord. And our stewardship committee here at St. Greg's over the years have always encouraged us to work towards giving half of that, 5%, to the work of the church, to the parish, and to allow that other 5% to be for other wonderful charity that you wish to do. Our stewardship of St. Greg's, it's important for us to remember that, we do not have corporate sponsors for the church. Very often you'll hear in the news where a company has adopted a public school. Well, no company is adopting Catholic schools. And we'll hear where various companies or corporations will take on various not-for-profit organizations and be, a major donor towards them and sponsor them. No one is doing that for us in the Catholic Church. It relies on you and me, the 10 virgins of the gospel, the baptized, and it really relies upon all of us, not just the 5 who persevere, but all of us to take seriously that call of stewardship. And so you'll look in the bulletin and see more information. And one of the things that I did write there, I will quote here, is that the average donation is about $9 a week. And so if that describes where you may be in your stewardship of treasure, I humbly ask you to maybe raise us to minimum wage, if you can, to all of us can question and prayerfully consider what we can do to be one of those 5 wise virgins that persevere in the midst of difficulty. Some might say it was the wrong time to give this homily, and I believe that it was the right time. Why? It's real easy to support the work of the church when things are going well, but it really requires those who persevere in their faith to continue to support the work of our parish and ministry in difficult moments. And no question we have them right now. One final thought, April 15th of 2019. I'm not sure if you remember that day. April 15th of 2019 was the day I know I watched the news, and you probably did, probably for an extended time, because it was on that day that we watched in the news the beautiful Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris burn. And I remember watching on the news that day, and I saw many individuals on the streets of Paris that they showed just weeping in disbelief of what was going on. And I saw many individuals on the streets of Paris. Some were singing Marian songs and they were praying. But also on the news there were those few individuals who persevered and ran into that burning building. And they saved the tabernacle, the Eucharist. They saved many of the relics and the precious artifacts of our faith. We owe a debt of thanks to them. And maybe we take that to our current moment and simply question as we look at our stewardship, do we want to be that individual who is willing to run in and persevere in the midst of a crisis, or would we rather sit on the sidelines and simply lament and cry?